Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. This morning, we're going to stick with our coverage of Jean-Luc Brunel. There's not too much going on as far as breaking news in the case, so I figured we would continue building this profile of this sick, disgusting bastard, Jean-Luc Brunel, add more context, add some more meat to the bone, and try and profile this man in the proper way. Because the legacy media seems to have forgotten that this man exists. No stories, nothing. Are we to just believe that this man up and vanished into thin air? What is this guy, Raceland Majir? I mean, come on. There's zero chance in the world that if the feds really wanted to swoop this guy up, that they couldn't. Who is protecting him? Is he being protected by the same people that are protecting Ghislaine Maxwell right now? I don't know. Look, I don't have the answers, folks. I wish I did. I wish I could come on the podcast every day and answer all of these crazy questions. Unfortunately, it seems like every time we get an answer or two, we add 20 more questions on top of it. So it's important to continue to build these profiles. It's important to make sure guys like Jean-Luc Brunel see the spotlight, because he was a key player in what was going on. A very, very important player. He was certainly a key component with bringing girls in from overseas, Eastern Europe, France, England, Lord knows where else. And the fact that he does not have his name stamped all over the place right now, and that there aren't articles coming out about him all the time, it blows my mind. This guy is a huge piece to the puzzle, folks. And today we are going to continue building the profile of Jean-Luc Brunel. Today's article is from the Daily Beast. The author of the article is Emily Sugarman. The headline: Models say Jeffrey Epstein's closest pal drugged and raped them. That's a pretty ominous headline, huh? Kind of ominous headline that you would think would have people getting arrested, at the very least, to sit down and have a talk, right? But no, in this world where these people move, in this world where these people shake, going to jail is unheard of. I highly suggest that you folks check out the Daily Beast's coverage of this story. They have done very, very, very good work following the Jeffrey Epstein case. One of the only outlets to continually, dig deep and provide good information, good context, and they've continued to cover the case. So make sure you check out the Daily Beast's work. Even as he was serially abusing underage girls, billionaire financier, pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein managed to collect a stable of powerful, famous friends. Former presidents, prime ministers, lawyers, and scientists with whom he could discuss his plans to improve the human race with his own DNA. And obviously it goes much deeper than that, right? We know that these scientists were working on a lot of confidential projects, a lot of projects that probably shouldn't be discussed. And we know that Jeffrey Epstein owned a lot of these academics, a lot of these scientists, and that Jeffrey Epstein not only had access to them, but also had access to the programs that they were working on and whatever sort of project they were cooking up. Again, do you really think it's just happened to be a coincidence that Jeffrey Epstein decided to move to Stanley, New Mexico? Pretty much smack dab in the middle of Los Alamos and the Santa Fe Institute? Do you really think that's just a coincidence? Or do you think he wanted to be very, very close to all of his academic stooges? But Epstein's closest pal appears not to have been a prominent politician or top academic, but a sleazy, scandal-prone modeling agent with virtually limitless connections to young women around the world. And I will say this about that statement: I don't believe that he was Jeffrey Epstein's best pal. I just believe that he was a convenient friend for Jeffrey Epstein, a convenient associate who was able to provide stuff that other people, A, might not be willing to provide, or B, not be able to provide. And with Jean-Luc Brunel's connections in the modeling world, and with his connections all around the seedy parts of that world, it was easy for Jean-Luc Brunel to swoop in and act as a top procurer for Jeffrey Epstein, and again, if we're talking in mob terms, his consigliere. Jean-Luc Brunel, 72, is the former head of Karen Models and MC2, two well-regarded international modeling agencies that launched the careers of cover girls like Ginta Lapina, Juana Berga, and Cecily Lopez. He has also been accused by former models of drugging and date raping them, and by former employees of recruiting foreign, underage girls to be pimped out of Epstein's New York apartments, and we know this to be the case for sure. We've heard Maria Farmer talk about it. We've heard other people talk about it. We've heard Steve Scully talk about it. It is a fact, in my opinion, that this was occurring, okay? And it is a travesty that the United States government, at least 3 administrations, going back 4 probably, let all of this occur underneath their noses. Nobody stood up. No hero appeared. Nobody from the Clinton administration, nobody from the Bush administration, nobody from the Obama administration, and certainly nobody from the Trump administration has stood up and held these people to account. Brunel and his attorney did not respond to multiple calls and emails seeking comment. The modeling agent has previously denied any sexual misconduct or involvement in Epstein's crimes. Of course he has. All of these people have done the same thing. Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. I had no idea that Jeffrey Epstein was a pervert son of a bitch. No, man, how would I know? Bro, don't worry about your friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. That's the least of your worries, buddy. A, you've been running around raping people since the 80s, supposedly. And B, you're being credibly accused by Virginia of taking part in the sexual abuse of her and perhaps other girls. I don't know that for a fact. That hasn't come out yet. But it would be logical to think that if Epstein was receiving 3 12-year-old models from France from Jean-Luc Brunel, that Jean-Luc Brunel was also partaking in the abuse, right? And then you add the fact that he's being credibly accused by Virginia, and it's not that hard to make the leap. I strongly deny having committed any illicit act or any wrongdoing in the course of my work as a scouter or a model agency's manager, Brunel said in a 2015 statement, adding, I have exercised with the utmost ethical standard for almost 40 years. So the last time anyone heard from this guy was 5 years ago. That's the last statement this guy's made. Nobody's decided to track him down. Nobody's chasing him down. There's no private investigators looking to talk to him. I mean, I know the Sun's offering a reward for Ghislaine Maxwell, because we know she's not in France, right? But nothing for Jean-Luc Brunel? Nobody's interested in what this clown has to say? Boy, if I had the resources, forget about it. There would not be a stone left unturned in my pursuit of this dirtbag. For years prior to Epstein's apparent suicide this month, Brunel was one of the financier pedophile's most frequent male associates. The agent appears more than 15 times on flight logs from Epstein's private plane, jetting everywhere from Paris to New York, often in the presence of young women. He visited Epstein nearly 70 times in jail, according to visitor logs, and several more times while the pedophile was on house arrest in Palm Beach. According to one of Epstein's housemen, Brunel was comfortable enough to whip up his own meals in the pedophile's kitchen and was one of Epstein's most frequent callers. And I've also heard reports that while Epstein was in the clink, if you want to call it that Jean-Luc Brunel was also staying at the Palm Beach mansion at times. So for this guy to act like him and Epstein weren't buddy-buddy, for him to act like he wasn't a key cog in the machine, it is ridiculous. This man is as guilty as the day is long, in my opinion. He needs to be swooped up right now, hit with RICO indictments, and put on trial. A trove of documents unsealed this month revealed several messages Brunel left for Epstein over the years, dutifully recorded by the financier, pedophile's employees, and later recovered by investigators. In one message, the note-taker reported that Brunel just did a good one, 18 years, who reportedly told him, "I love Jeffrey." So the people who were writing these notes were aiding and abetting after the fact the actions of sexual abusers at the very least. That alone is a predicate for RICO. I don't know how much clearer I need to be that this is a RICO case no matter how you chop it. There is no way in hell how this does not end up in a RICO case when we have a proper functioning justice system. He has a teacher for you to teach you how to speak Russian, reads another note, dated September 2005. She is 2 times 8, 16 years old, not blonde. Lessons are free, and you can have the first today if you call. Think about what that is inferring to. And then try not to vomit before you let it register. The person who took these notes is just as guilty as Jeffrey Epstein and Jean-Luc Brunel. While it is unclear how they met, Brunel and Epstein were friends since at least the launch of MC2 in 2005, according to legal documents. That's incorrect. Their relationship goes back way, way, way further than that. Jean-Luc Brunel has been running around the scene in New York for quite some time. We know that Jeffrey Epstein was a fixture in so-called polite society, and we know that these two dudes were definitely a lot closer than that. Considering MC2, which was opened in 2005, Epstein was a silent partner and, had a lot of connections to this modeling agency. What did they just meet one day and then 3 weeks later Epstein was like, all right, let's go into business together? Of course not. This relationship was set up. This relationship was put into motion, and then we see where it went. We see how it ended up. In fact, Epstein and MC2 were so closely associated that one insider referred to the pedophile as the silent E in the agency's equation. For those who failed high school science, E equals MC squared is the formula underpinning Albert Einstein's theory of relativity. And that is why the company was named MC2. So for people to act like Epstein and Jean-Luc Brunel weren't close, or there's nothing here, there's not a thread to be pulled on here. Did you fall and hit your head? Are you suffering from CTE? Because that's the only way that you can look at this case and not understand the sort of monster and animal that Jean-Luc Brunel is. Representatives for Epstein and MC2 have long denied having any business relationship, but Brunel admitted in court documents that Epstein once extended him a $1 million letter of credit, which the agent used to invest in a new venture with elite models in Paris. The venture, E-Management, was first registered by Epstein's attorney, who listed its address as 457 Madison Avenue, the same as Epstein's investment firm, J. Epstein and Company. See, what Jeffrey Epstein was trying to do here, folks, is the same thing he was doing at Victoria's Secret, but at a whole different kind of level. Whereas a little bit of discretion at the very least must have been used during the Victoria's Secret modeling shows, when Jeffrey Epstein has you as a model at his agency that he's running from behind the scenes, well, that's a whole different ballgame entirely, right? You are completely and utterly at his mercy, in his grasp, and bound for misery. According to Brunel, the venture fell apart after elite models learned of the sex trafficking allegations against Epstein. The modeling agent even sued Epstein in 2015, claiming the allegations had tarnished his agency's reputation and caused him a tremendous loss of business. This is like Stalin suing Hitler. I mean, are you kidding me? No matter how scummy Jeffrey Epstein's stink is, your stink is just as bad, Mr. Brunel. You dumb, disgusting bastard. But at least two people have claimed that Brunel not only knew about the trafficking, he was an active participant. And this is what I was talking about, and this is why the profile is so important, and this is why we're hammering it home again on the podcast today. Virginia Roberts, one of the first survivors to speak out against Epstein after he was granted a sweetheart plea deal, claimed in legal filings that Brunel was one of many powerful men she was forced to sleep with in her years as Epstein's sex slave. She also accused Brunel of using his agency to find foreign girls, obtain visas for them, and farm them out to his friends, including Epstein. Think about that for a minute, what that means. How many girls were, quote unquote, farmed out to Epstein? And then, what happened to all of these girls? Where are they? What happened to the unnamed girls who were abused by Jeffrey Epstein and provided for him by Jean-Luc Brunel? Where are all of these girls? That is a question that I want answered yesterday. A lot of the girls came from poor countries or poor backgrounds, and he lured them in with a promise of making good money, Roberts said in a 2015 affidavit. Jeffrey Epstein has told me that he has slept with over 1,000 of Brunel's girls, and everything that I have seen confirms this claim. Guys, just think about that for a moment, what that means. And this isn't just some half-assed source saying this or unnamed source saying this. This is Virginia saying this. Over 1,000 girls trafficked to Jeffrey Epstein by Jean-Luc Brunel. Now, do you think Brunel was doing that by himself? Or were there other participants? Don't you think it's important to find out? Don't you think it's important to make sure that the remnants of this trafficking ring are crushed and scattered into the winds of history? And the precedent is set that going forward, if anyone else ever thinks of doing something such as this, that the penalties would be so severe that they wouldn't even think about it? In a nation of laws, that's what would occur. In a nation where justice is equal to everybody, that would occur. But unfortunately, folks, that is not the nation we live in, and it has not been the nation we have lived in for decades. Describing an orgy she was allegedly forced to participate in on Epstein's private island, Roberts added, "My assumption was that Jean-Luc Brunel got the girls from Eastern Europe as he procured many foreign girls for Epstein. They were young and European-looking and sounding. And we know that that is a perfect, fertile feeding ground for these disgusting flesh vampires, right? War-torn areas, areas that are very poor, areas where these girls will do anything to get out of these countries. I mean, have you seen like a show like 90 Day Fiancé and some of these beautiful Ukrainian women and some of the dudes they're talking to in America just to get to America and get a visa? Now you have some guy show up and some big modeling guy has some buck, shows up, nice car, other girls with him, and he's telling you all these pie in the sky dreams, how you're going to be this great model, you're going to be the next insert great model here, and he's going to make it happen. And these are girls that you have to understand, folks. You think we're poor in America or in other Western countries? You don't know what poverty is until you go to a war-torn place, a place where it's been filled with economic and political strife. People will do anything to escape those environments. And these young girls were lured into this life by Jean-Luc Brunel, at least 1,000 according to Virginia, from Jeffrey Epstein's own mouth, into the clutches of this monster to be abused and then discarded and tossed into the trash heap. It is absolutely unacceptable, and it is absolutely unacceptable that this man's story is not blasted all over the news. A former employee of MC2 Martiza Vasquez also accused Brunel of similar misdeeds. Vasquez, who worked as a bookkeeper for the agency between 2003 to 2006, told the FBI that Brunel employed scouts to bring in teenage models from South America, Europe, and the former Soviet Union. The most desirable of those teens were housed in Epstein's Upper East Side apartments and loaned out to wealthy clients for up to $100,000 a night, Vasquez alleged. If they refused to be molested, she said they would not be paid. Brunel has denied these claims and says Vasquez was fired from his agency for embezzling company funds. Think about that, folks. $100,000 a night. Now, they're not running around the South Bronx selling these girls for $100,000 a night, are they? Who has $100,000 to spend a night with a girl? Only members of polite society, folks. Only members of a society where we are not invited. These people are sick, they're depraved, and they do not care about you, me, or our families. That much is quite evident. Over the years, several outlets reported that the FBI was investigating Brunel, but no charges ever emerged. In fact, the modelizer managed to avoid being deposed in a single civil suit against Epstein, of which there were more than a dozen. In a lawsuit filed by Brad Edwards, an attorney for several Epstein survivors, the lawyer claimed Brunel skirted depositions by saying he was living in France when he was in fact staying at Epstein's Palm Beach mansion. And there's what I was inferring before about him staying at the Palm Beach mansion. We've heard this from a lot of credible sources, and if you're following the case, you know they don't get more credible than Bradley Edwards, or more heroic, especially in this case. So this guy has never even had to answer at a deposition, nothing. He's never answered any questions, and nobody's talking about him. Well, we're talking about him. Jean-Luc Brunel, you have our attention now, sir. And when you have my attention, believe me, you have it. Brunel, in his 2015 suit, claimed Epstein had pressured him into skipping the depositions and said he regretted missing the chance to clear his company's name. He also claimed to have lost millions of dollars in potential business due to the notoriety and tremendous publicity surrounding Epstein's criminal charges. Charges he claimed to have nothing to do with. The suit included emails from several agents and talent scouts saying they could not work with Brunel because of the sexual misconduct allegations. So they couldn't work with him because of the sexual conduct allegations, right? But it's cool that he's being incredibly accused of rape for decades, right? That didn't stop them from working with him. I'm telling you right now, there is a story to be told about the modeling world. And at some point, it's a story that really needs to be dug into by somebody who is competent and reliable, because there is malfeasance running amok within that industry. And the poor girls that get sucked into that industry are being abused at a large and alarming rate. I have decided to bring judicial proceedings in France and in the United States against allegations which cause considerable damage to me personally and to my models' agencies, Brunel said in a statement at the time. I strongly deny having participated, neither directly nor indirectly, in the actions of Mr. Jeffrey Epstein is being accused of. You can deny it all you want, but you have no evidence. The evidence is very clear here, sir. All right? It's not like you've been some upstanding citizen your whole life, a married man, always devout to his wife, etc., and then these allegations are dropped on you. No, you've been a smarmy worm your whole entire life. You've been accused of rape. You've been accused of all sorts of disgusting crimes, and you act like people should just believe what you have to say, like your entire life's work leads us to that point. But charges of sexual misconduct have followed Brunel since before he met Epstein. In Michael Gross's 1995 book, Model, several of Brunel's peers described him as a dangerous playboy known for preying on young women. Elite Models founder John Casablancas, who himself has been accused of sexual misconduct, told Gross that Brunel and his friends were known for roaming Paris nightclubs to invite girls and put drugs in their drinks. Sounds like a bunch of fantastic people, huh? These modeling agency scouts sure are top-notch individuals. I mean, there's nothing creepy about these old-ass men who want to be around young girls in lingerie or anything anyway, right? Because that's normal behavior for old men. Give me a break already. Cut the shit. Cut the lies and cut the nonsense. In Ian Halperin's Bad and Beautiful, one former Karen model accused Brunel and his friends of inviting more than a dozen models to a private party at one of their apartments, then forcing some of the young women to have sex with them. Most of the women felt they had been raped, the former model said, but they were afraid to report it to the police because Brunel would ruin their careers. And that was a very valid fear for them to have, right? Jean-Luc Brunel was a very powerful modeling scout, a guy that was running around with the power brokers of the industry. For these young girls, especially these young girls that come from these poor, war-torn countries, what do you expect them to do? They're supposed to stand up to Jean-Luc Brunel? Especially when the authorities don't give a shit and the complicit legacy media is no better. What are they supposed to stand by themselves in front of the world and say that this man did such and such to me? Nobody's going to believe them. Well, guess what? We all believe you now. In a 60 Minutes feature from 1988, several American models who worked with Brunel in Paris described a culture in which young models were plied with drugs and taken to parties with older men. At the parties, women said they would be denied work if they declined the men's sexual advances. 2 women in the feature accused Brunel of drugging them. One accused him of raping her while she was unconscious. And it's typical for people like this guy, right? We've heard this about this man several times. And he is still avoiding scrutiny. According to Craig Pies, one of the reporters on the piece, the story did not end there. Pies said he spoke with 3 more women over the course of his 6-month investigation who said they were drugged and raped by Brunel or his friends, but who did not feel comfortable coming forward on air. And folks, how many times have we seen that in this kind of case, especially the Epstein case? Women not wanting to come forward because they're scared of reprisals. When you have someone like Ghislaine Maxwell threatening you like she did to Maria Farmer, you understand why. My sense, based upon the allegations, is that Jean-Luc was a predator. His group was a predator, and they used their tools of power and leverage to force sex from women who otherwise might not be willing to engage in it, Pies told the Daily Beast. Of course he did. That was their MO. That's what these people do. They feel like their power and their wealth gives them the freedom to treat you, me, or anybody they feel is below them any way that they deem necessary. Brunel declined to be interviewed by 60 Minutes at the time, but later denied the allegations. Christie Turlington, a top model and close friend of Brunel's, later told Halperin she thought some of the stories were exaggerated. In this business, you never know who to believe, she said. Isn't that nice? Christie Turlington laying cover for Jean-Luc Brunel. Remember that next time Christie Turlington has some sort of product out, folks. Just this week, New Zealand model Zoe Brock told French publication Libération she briefly lived in Brunel's apartment at age 17, but left after he insisted they would have to sleep together eventually. The allegations are similar to those Brock made in a 2007 Medium piece. Thezia Hoosman, a Dutch model, claimed she wasn't so lucky. After initially resisting Brunel's advances, she said, the agent gave her a drink that made her feel dizzy, then brought her into his bedroom and assaulted her. Aren't these allegations on their own enough? Then you have to add into the fact all of the girls he provided for Jeffrey Epstein and what he did to Virginia. If law enforcement would have just taken it seriously, if they would have acted in the correct way, how much pain could have been ended? How much pain could have been avoided? I remember he was on me. I tried to push him away, and the noise when he ripped my clothes, she told Liberation. Then it's the black hole. I woke up in bed, I was totally disoriented. I went to collect my belongings in the room where I slept, and I went directly to the station to leave Paris. The private allegations not to the prior allegations seem not to have hampered Brunel's business too much. In recent years, MC2 has counted major department stores like Nordstrom's, Macy's, and Saks Fifth Avenue as clients, according to a letter from Brunel's business partner first obtained by Bloomberg. A Nordstrom executive even wrote a letter expressing her full and unqualified support of Brunel's visa application in 2014. Isn't that nice, huh? Sarah Ziff, the founder of the advocacy organization Model Alliance, said behavior like Brunel's is often overlooked in the modeling industry. Unfortunately, predatory behavior has been normalized and, in turn, even enabled by some modeling agents who may lack the judgment or training to address or prevent these abuses from happening, Ziff told the Daily Beast. Lack the training? How about just lacking basic morals? How about just lacking basic human compassion? How about just being, a human flippin' being? Today, however, Brunel's influence over his modeling empire appears to be diminishing. MC2 announced in 2012 that Brunel would be moving to a scouting and consulting role for the company. On Friday, a spokesperson for MC2 in New York told the Daily Beast that Brunel was basically retired and living out of the country. As for specifics about Brunel's role, the spokesperson said he doesn't really have one. And this is how they do it. Oh, he's not with the company anymore, so that's the end of that. We're not answering any questions. We don't know anything about the guy. Meanwhile, he ran the company, owned the company, was in charge of the company for years and years and years. Nobody knew anything, huh? None of you knew anything. Okay. Ruth Malka, who took over Karen Models from Brunel in the early 2000s, told Liberation she hadn't worked with him in years. Malka told the website she never witnessed any improper behavior on Brunel's part, but added, "I'm shocked at everything I hear. It disgusts me." Oh yeah, you never heard anything. Nobody heard anything. Nobody saw anything. Nobody witnessed anything. Well, here's some breaking news for all of you who didn't witness anything. Unfortunately for all of you, we know the score. We are witnessing your denial. We are witnessing your ineffectual defense, and we are also witnessing you still provide cover and enable a sex trafficking ring that was run by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Your time is up, Mr. Brunel, and I want you to understand this very clearly. The predator has now become the prey. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. Inside of the description box, you will find a link to the GoFundMe account if you would like to help the podcast, and you will find a link to the article we discussed today. All right, everybody, I hope you all have enjoyed your weekend so far, and I hope that you have a fantastic Sunday. We will be back later on with some more.